whether you're in so I'll give a couple of reasons, right? If you're in an early stage, you desperately need the clarity of what your business is actually costing you, what's profitable and what's not, because you think you know it all, you think you have it all in your head, and you may to a point, but I guarantee there's stuff you're missing.
Welcome to Biz Help for You, the show that saves you the expensive learning curve by providing advice from industry experts in every facet of the entrepreneurial journey. Too many small businesses collapse. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 20% fail within their first year, and less than 35% make it to their 10th anniversary. The goal of this podcast is to change that statistic. So if you're interested in learning more to be a successful entrepreneur, tune in today.
If you're a business owner feeling financially overwhelmed or unsure how to draw the line between your business and personal money, you're not alone. In this episode, we're joined by financial guide Nick Garofalo, who shares the most common mistake entrepreneurs make with their money and how to fix it. From biblical stewardship principles to practical tools like Profit First, you'll walk away with clarity, confidence, and steps to create financial peace in your business and life. So Nick, welcome to the show.
I'm thrilled to be here, Kenny. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you here today, too. I think this is one of the topics that I love to talk about, too. I'm involved in finance and bookkeeping, and I know Profit First. I read the book many years ago, and I follow Mike Michalowicz. So I'm excited to talk about this today, especially for those who maybe have never even heard about these concepts. But I would love for you first to even just talk about, what is the common reason why business owners kind of blur the line between personal and business finances?
Man, that's a great question. It's probably the first is that if you're still relatively new in business, you may not know how to cleanly pay yourself out of your business and actually get money out, because doing that requires some level of bookkeeping. And if you haven't hired a bookkeeper yet, you may not really know how to do it, and so you just kind of buy stuff with your business card and you'll figure it out later. And then that becomes a habit, which 10 years in is still a problem.
And we see that a lot too as bookkeeping companies. We help people actually post all their transactions. And when we've talked to them about separating the business and personal, they thought, I just thought it was easier. I don't have a big business yet. One bank account. We're like, no, just make it easy, separate it. And it's just better. Get rid of the red flags,
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times people just don't understand why they need to.
I would say that's probably the biggest reason, right? Because if you don't recognize what it's costing you to blend those two categories of money, there's really not a huge reason or impetus to change. Whether you're in so I'll give a couple of reasons, right? If you're in an early stage, you desperately need the clarity of what your business is actually costing you, what's profitable and what's not, because you think you know it all, you think you have it all in your head, and you may to a point, but I guarantee there's stuff you're missing, no matter how big or small your business is. But then also you need the discipline of actually paying yourself to retrain your perspective of your business, that you have invested into a company. It just happens to be yours and you own all of it, but you have invested into a company, and you hope to do that to get returns, get distributions, earn a living. And if your business is not acting like a business, and you're not treating it financially like a business, then you're probably going to be disappointed and stressed and frustrated. But then also you are more than likely leaving money on the table, where you are. So as a bookkeeper, you understand this, right? You see people, passing personal expenses through the business, and you just add those back for tax purposes, right? Because that's not a true tax deduction. But what if it was an actual legitimate, ordinary, necessary business reason for spending money that also just so happened to then give a personal benefit? Well, you're not going to know that as the bookkeeper, right? You don't know what the $200 expense to such and such store was. If it was personal or business, you kind of assume on the safe side that it was personal. You just exclude it from, you write it, you write it back in, really, right? But if they can prove and justify that it was legitimate, that it did have a purpose, well, then, guess what? That's a legitimate tax write-off. So anyway, it's the ignorance is not bliss when it comes to your personal and business finances.
Right. Exactly. Well, I think a lot of times too, people start thinking, well, maybe it's a hobby. I just want to do something for fun and don't necessarily think it's going to be a business. And then it turns into one. So they don't set things up properly from the beginning. But then if someone does intend for it to be a business anyway, but they're so overwhelmed starting the business and doing all the things, they just don't necessarily have time right away. So I think it just becomes one of those things that they think they'll get to later and then they don't, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think also, Candy, if that was you a few years ago, at this point, you're probably a little embarrassed that you still
Hmm.
haven't gotten this figured out. And you're still, filing your own taxes and just hoping that nobody's really going to have a problem with anything. And it's kind of embarrassing to walk into the office of a professional and be like, hey, I kind of need help. It's a mess.
Hmm.
Uh, and that embarrassment, that kind of shame can, uh, just because it started as a hobby and now has turned into something profitable, like, congratulations, that's great, that's fantastic. Don't let, because okay, if it was a hobby, I understand, there may not be a reason to set everything up. If it's truly just, we're going to do something for a few months and just,
Hmm.
anyway, if it's really, really small, I guess there's a use case for that. But yeah, I think that embarrassment and that shame keeps a lot of people away too.
Hmm. I agree with you too. I know people have said before too, like, well, I was afraid to show you what my numbers look like, and it's like, we're here to help you and we don't judge, right? And I think that's a good point that you make is that people are afraid of, well, how am I going to be perceived? Well, just come to us and say, I need help. And then let us help you, right? And get the numbers because those numbers are going to help you make wise business decisions too. And if you don't really have the financial reports, you don't know exactly where you stand, which, like you're saying, maybe they have some idea in their head, but they don't really know all the details. So I'm glad you brought up about the embarrassment because I would love to say to anyone listening who thinks it's the case, don't be embarrassed. Just let us help you because our goal is to help you be successful. So I would love for
100%.
you. Yeah, I was gonna say, I would love for you also just to talk about like what are some of the practical steps that an entrepreneur can take to create financial boundaries for their business? And again, we know separating business and personal funds is one thing, but do you have other practical steps that they can take?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it depends on the business and the complexity in the industry. But for like a service-based business or, for example, like construction or landscaping, something like that, where you've got, some equipment and you've got, um, some potential like financial complexity there. Keeping things as simple as possible is easier said than done, but it's really, really important especially when you are, uh, small enough that you're still having to wear a lot of hats. Really important to keep
Hmm.
things simple. For that reason, I really love the profit first system, although it's a
Hmm.
bit of a, dare I say, a headache to set up because you got to go create like 5 bank accounts and you got to get your accountant on board, and maybe they don't know it, maybe they don't like it, who knows? So it can be a little tricky to get started. But basically, all that system is going to do is give you a really, really nice, clean awareness of, if I sell $1,000 worth of product or service, I know that, $150 of that is personal profit to me. And my
Hmm.
business is going to learn to run on $500 of it. And then I'm going to pay taxes and, whatever else with the rest, operating
Hmm.
expenses. Um, that kind of cash flow clarity is like gold, and
Hmm.
it's worth every ounce of sweat and energy you put into achieving it. But it's got to start with cash flow. Same with like personal,
Hmm.
right? If you don't have a good clear picture of how much money is coming into your household and where it's going once it gets to you, you can't
Hmm.
make a plan. You can't. There's not a lot of strategy or a lot of clear decision making that you can enact without good
Hmm.
data.
Right. I love Profit First too. And like I said, it's funny, before I ever read the book, I had already been recommending to clients about having, at least another bank account to put like liability money in. So if they're collecting sales tax over a quarter and they, pay it the following, quarter, what happens if you've spent that money? Now you're in trouble, right? And that money is not even your money to begin with. You're just collecting it from the customer. So I used to recommend too, well, have an operating account, but have a separate account where you put this money in. And when you're going to pay it, you can move it back in or pay from that account. And then I read Profit First, right? And I was like, oh, this is amazing to
Ding.
have. a resource where it does
Yeah.
make you think too, like you have to purposely plan, like, oh, I need to take the profit, I need to make sure I pay myself, and then whatever's left I'm using for operating expenses. And it turns everything on its head, right? Because a lot of times people think, well, if there's any money left over, I'll pay myself. Right. But this forces you to allocate. So do you want to actually go into a little bit more detail, really what Profit First really is? And you mentioned 5 accounts. Like, do you want to really touch a little bit more on the accounts and why you have these different accounts, and go from there?
Sure. Yeah. So the Profit First system basically flips on its head the conventional uh, profit and loss statement equation of revenue minus expenses equals profits. And instead you put profits at the top, and it says profits equals revenue, or what is it? It equals revenue minus expenses.
Well,
Right.
you're focusing on profit beforehand. So instead of, like you said, instead of saying revenue minus expenses profit, it's revenue minus profit equals what you have left over for expenses, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. What you said. Yeah. But the point being, right. So you're paying yourself first, right? And so you're backing into, whether you're using history or benchmarking or data, or even just a slow incremental 1% per month or per quarter kind of step up, you're backing into a profit margin of say 10 or 20 or 30% based on your business and your industry and your size and all that. And then you're just paying that first to yourself. Instead of letting that just be whatever's left over after your business has had its way with all of the money that came in. But the 5 accounts that you have set up, you have your income account where all of your checks and all of your ACHs, all of your money comes in to the business. And then it's going to flow to 4 key accounts. Those are operating, so profit, of course, first, because that's the name of the book. So profit first, then owner compensation. That's a separate account. Right. And I think that's a really important distinction, is that your business should be both profitable and it should pay you. After that, it's taxes, because again, that's not your money to begin with, and you're collecting that and you're going to have to remit that. So let's go ahead and pay it so it doesn't hurt in April or September, whenever you file. But we've got profit, owner compensation, taxes. And then the last lonely category is operating expenses. That's what your business has left to run on. And so the concept is, operating expenses usually is somewhere between 50 and 70% of sales for most businesses. And so if you just go ahead and cut off the rest of that money, you're forcing your business, when I say your business, really I mean you, to operate on 50 cents on the dollar of sales. Instead of selling $10,000 and thinking, oh great, I've got 10,000 in sales to now go and I can do this or that, or I can, and I think this helps answer questions before they're asked, like, oh, well, I could really use a new piece of equipment. Hey, Candy, can I afford this? Well, I don't know. Let's look at how much you have saved in your operating expenses toward this. Well, nothing. Okay. Well, how are you going to pay for it? Well, I was just going to pull out of my profit account. No, wrong answer, because your profits are yours. You need to actually take them and save and invest, and take your family on a vacation and enjoy the business like you made it, to be enjoyed. But yeah, so that's the simplest model, right? Those 5 accounts, income, and then the rest. If you have, for example, sales tax, that would be separate and distinct from taxes. If you have reimbursements, that's separate even from income, because it's money coming to you that just has to pass straight through to wherever it's going. So that would be a separate account. If you have deposits that you take from customers, like 50% up front, that is unearned revenue. So you would put that in a separate account and then feed it into income once it's actually earned. So there's some complexity to it. I've actually got a really cool flow chart I've made for this. If that would be helpful for your listeners, but it's just kind of a way to visualize what's happening with your money. And again, there's simple implementations all the way up to like 15 account level complexity implementations. But what you're really doing by implementing this is, it's playing to the tendency that most business owners already live by. And that's what I love about it, is most business owners live by the bank account balance, right? If there's money in the bank account, life's good, right? And I watched my dad do this for like 2 decades. And instead of trying to break that habit and retrain someone to a new way of, no, you need to look at this financial statement, and you can't ever look at it until like 6 weeks after the end of the month, and you got to wait for your, like, no. Let's just retrain the bank account system so that it works for the entrepreneur, so they can see on a daily basis how much do I have in profits? How much do I have in income? What money is coming in? Where's it going? So yeah, it all just goes back to cash flow, and it's a cool system. It really is.
I do have in my business too, where some people pay us ahead of time. They want to have like a discount. So we offer, if they pay, you know, they could pay 6 months at a time or a year at a time or things like that too. So we do have the unearned income. And so I do have one account specifically for that. And twice a month, I do my allocations twice a month. So twice a month, I look at what have we earned in this period of time. And I then move it from the unearned revenue into the deposits account, right? And then that of course gets allocated to the different accounts. And then I have one additional one myself too, that I have a lot of things I have to pay once a year. And so I have determined, like, in the year, I'm going to pay this much money. And I divide that by 24 for the 24 allocations I do. And then twice a month, I just put a flat amount, you know, or well, it's a percentage of the deposits, of course, into that account. And so then when those big bills come due, insurance or, you know, software costs or whatever, the money's already sitting in that account. And then I'll move it into OPEX when I pay my credit card bill or whatever. So that's how I've also made it work for me, because again, I have a few different things too. So I think people can take the basics that are recommended in the book and then fine tune it for their specific business too. Just like you were mentioning, it could be 5 accounts, it could be 15, right? Depending on what your needs are. But I think you're, you know, pointing out that it trains your brain to really start thinking differently about your finances. So instead of saying, I just can't afford to pay myself, I'm going to work another couple months and see what happens, right? You need to change it. So you are paying yourself for what you're doing. If you weren't doing it, someone else would have to do it, right? You'd have to pay that employee. So why not make sure you're paying yourself too?
So I want to highlight the why. Okay. Because if I'm a listener to this conversation right now, I'm thinking, okay, Nick and Candy, that's nice. Good for y'all. But like, I don't have time for that. And I you know, I'm not even that complicated, and I kind of know my numbers. I'm okay. So why does it matter for that listener? And I would push back and say, what is it costing you to not have financial clarity right now?
Mm-hmm.
What's the stress that you're carrying, or going back to what I said, the shame, that embarrassment, that, and I talked to somebody who's been in business for 3.5 decades. Okay. This guy's weathered many storms. He's employed a lot of people, and he sat across from me, and just shared from his heart how embarrassed he was from feeling like he should be further along. And he feels so behind. And I just kind of sat back in my chair, and I said, you know, listen, John, like, you're killing it. Like, look at what you've done. Look at how this business has existed and grown, and it's provided for your family and all these other families and employees. Look at all the great work you've done for all your clients. And like, this is amazing. But what's gotten you here, right? Like, a lot of it will get you further, but now you need some extra pieces and some extra people and some extra support and structure. And that's what I want to help you with. And so, you know, we kind of went through the profit first system. He's really interested. We haven't actually pulled the trigger on implementation yet, but anyway, it was a humbling spot to just sit across from this veteran business owner who confessed feeling so behind. And so I just want to, you know, if you're listening and that's kind of how you're feeling right now, or if you're listening and just feeling like, this isn't worth the work, I would just go back to having financial clarity and having a solid handle on your cash flow and your financial position right now in your business and your personal life is worth a lot more than you may give it credit for. And it actually is possible. That's the other thing. Like, it really, really is possible. And it just doesn't cost, you know, $1 million to work with Candy or I to like get that kind of clarity in your life.
Right. And that's what I was going to say. If someone's like, well, I'm not good at math, I'm not going to be able to figure all the numbers out. You don't have to. You can hire somebody that can help you with this aspect of it, and you could do the other parts of your business, right?
Right. And guess what? When that stress is gone, you're a whole lot more energized to go and do more in your business, because you've taken off something that you were never honestly maybe good at to begin with, and put it on the shoulder of someone who is really good at it. So you can go back to being what made you successful in the first place. Right. Because like you didn't get in business, like Candy, you got in business to be a bookkeeper, right? But you didn't get in business to be a landscaper. Okay. So like mowing the grass outside of your office is probably not the best use of your time. right? You're
Right.
going to hire somebody to come and like, tend the shrubs and whatnot. But like, point being, if you're a landscaper, you didn't get into business to be a bookkeeper. So like, why would you
Mhm.
carry that as like, oh, I just have to do this now because I own a business? And like, whoa, hold on. You could probably get a whole lot better return on your time out working in your business, doing the work of your business, than you could sitting behind the desk at 10 o'clock at night or 2 a.m. trying to sort
Mhm.
through your books, right? So anyway, that's kind of my pitch.
Nice. Well, and I know you come from a faith-based background, and I would love to hear your opinion about how aligning financial practices with biblical stewardship principles can impact a business owner's relationship with money.
Oh, wow. That's a great question. That's a big question. Wow. I love how you said that. Yeah. Impact your relationship with money. Okay. So I'll start with the name of my firm, which is Open Handed Wealth. I believe that having an open hand is the only way that we can have a healthy relationship with money,
Mm.
right? We were never designed to just accumulate all we possibly can and hoard it for ourselves.
Mhm.
Ultimately, everything in this beautiful world that's full of resources and full of wealth and full of wonderful people, um, it's all God's, right? Our businesses, even the breath we're breathing, it's all His. All of the money in our bank accounts, it's all His. So how would He have us steward those resources, invest those assets, spend
Mhm.
the time, spend the money? How would He do it if He were literally in charge of our bank account and our business and our time? So that being a prereq to any conversation about bookkeeping or financial strategy or business, really just helps to alleviate the pressure we can often feel that I've got to figure this out.
Mhm.
But B, it can also reorient away from the goal is make as much money as I possibly can at the lowest expenses and as efficiently as possible. Really, really kind of breaks that, right? Because God is not inherently efficient. That is
Mhm.
not His highest value, and that's not how He's designed the world. And so there may be times when He calls us or invites us to do things in our business that don't make sense on paper, that don't make the
Mhm.
most efficient use of whatever, at least in our estimation, in our judgment. Um, and we really need to lean into that and trust Him and walk with Him into those places, even if they may not make sense on paper. Um,
Mhm. That's
so I
true.
think that as a foundation is the first,
Mhm.
that's the first piece.
Right.
Um,
And I think sometimes people feel guilty about making a lot of money too, if they're coming from that area where people are sometimes saying like business owners are greedy or whatever. But if you're coming at it from the perspective that I can make a difference, I can, donate to local charities or impact my local area or maybe even things that are national or whatever, but you can make an impact with what you're doing too. So you don't want to purposely limit, let's say, like what you're making, but that shouldn't be the ultimate goal either, right? The ultimate goal should really be how can what I'm doing bless other people, right?
Well, yeah, and if you open to Genesis, what you'll see before the fall, when Eve and Adam took and ate of the fruit and sin entered the whole world and broke everything really horribly. Before all that happened, there were two commands that God gave, two mandates that He gave to Adam and to Eve. The first was be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, and uh, you know that was the first. Be fruitful, multiply. The second was rule and subdue and have dominion over the world. Bring order, bring structure, and bring designs and creativity into this world of beautiful chaos that is a
Hmm.
huge canvas full of resources for you to go and create.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I believe that is a beautiful picture that business like meets that command. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's sales at its most core essence is business at its most core essence is helping other people, building relationships and solving problems in exchange for some sort of economic value.
Mm-hmm.
And that gain from trade is the core foundation of economic theory that promotes economic development and human flourishing. So
Mm-hmm.
business is a really beautiful thing when done with the right intent and with the right heart, and again with an open-handed perspective, but like hey, I'm going to work hard and do something good in the world to help other people in exchange for money. That's a really beautiful fulfillment of that that Genesis mandate, and
Right.
seeing your business as an opportunity to bring beauty and structure and order into the world kind of changes. I don't know, it just kind of reframes everything.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
again, carrying that same kind of perspective, that stewardship mindset into your personal finances and your financial decisions, it can touch everything, right? From your uses of cash flow to your spending habits to the motivations for your giving, and because it's not all about just giving money away. I believe we can honor the Lord in our investing, in our spending, in our saving, and in our giving, and so in our making of money as well.
Right. Well, and I think too, for my own business too, I've been able to hire many people over the years. I started my business in 2002 and I hired my first person in 2006. So there's been quite a few years that I've been able to offer gainful employment. I've trained people too, from like people had come in where they had no job skills or anything, and I actually brought them in and gave them, real life experience that has developed them over time, and they were able over time to get to even a bigger position, with a bigger company. Like one guy actually worked with me, and I remember when he was giving his resignation, he's like, it's a really hard decision because I love working here, but I got a job at USC. I was like, how is that even a question, right? Like, I can't do the same things that USC can. He could get a free education even, right? So, but it was things like that I was able to bless other people through the opportunities I gave them to develop themselves even, right? And so it doesn't even always have to be financial as well, too. We could be giving back through other things, but I have just been so thankful that I've been able to make a difference in other people's lives through the business. And that is something that I don't have to be like feeling bad about, because yes, I was profitable. If I wasn't profitable, I'd be out of business, and there would have been a lot of people who wouldn't have had employment, right? So I think we have to shift our mindset sometimes to say, it's okay to be profitable. And yes, there's a negative thing out there about, companies and, all this money that they want to make. And it's not that we want to make a lot of money, but we want to make a difference.
I guess just kind of a final thought there is, if you're uncomfortable making potentially a lot of money in your business and being very profitable, then who would you prefer to be really profitable and make a lot of money? Who would do a better job of stewarding that resource?
Mm-hmm.
Because perhaps God has put you there and equipped you and now blessed you, like in the book of Esther, right, for such a time as this. Maybe there's a lot more reason for your success. Yeah, so
perfect. Well, this has been a great discussion, and I know we're coming to the end of the time that we have together. So I would love to ask if you have an offer that you would like to extend to our listeners and how they can contact you if they want more information.
Yeah, I love connecting with listeners, and so if this has resonated with you at all as you've been listening, you can reach me at nick@openhandedwealth.com. That's my firm. You can also just visit openhandedwealth.com. Find me on LinkedIn. If you can spell my last name, good luck. Just kidding.
Do
It
you
is
want to
linked on my
spell it?
website. Just so you know, Garofalo. But yeah, as far as an offer, I think that flow chart for Profit First would be pretty cool. I'd be glad to share that with you to give. But I've got a couple of great resources on my website around a lot of the topics we've actually talked about today. But if you just go to openhandedwealth.com/freebies, I've got 5 or 6 resources there for your listeners.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Nick, for being a guest on my show and, sharing your expertise on this topic. I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure, Candy. Thanks so much for having me.
And to the listener, if you enjoyed today's topic and you want to hear additional information, you can find access to exclusive content in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in today. Would you please share this episode with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? And if you find our show informative, would you consider being a financial sponsor to help me continue my mission to educate business owners? A link is located in the episode description, and no amount is too small. I'd really appreciate your support. If you are interested in connecting with our guest and receiving the offer they had to share, a link to our resource page is in the show notes. Finally, if you have any bookkeeping or payroll needs, reach out to us at 310-534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.